as countless people shout at their screens, paint their faces, and feel genuinely crushed because 11 unfamiliar players lost a match, there exists a huge segment of the population that feels absolutely nothing, and neuroscience suggests their brains may actually function in a different way. Stick with me, because what I'm about to explain will radically shift how you view the sports-obsessed individuals around you. Here's the part no one really mentions. Being uninterested in sports doesn't make you dull. It doesn't mean you lack enthusiasm, and it certainly doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. However, something remarkable is happening inside your brain that sets you apart from the roughly 70% of Americans who follow sports with near religious devotion. Let's begin with the most obvious question. Why do so many people care so intensely? Humans are inherently tribal. For thousands of years, belonging to a group was essential for survival. Your tribe shielded you from danger, helped you hunt, ensured your survival, and sports? They're essentially modern-day tribes with superior branding. When someone watches their favorite team, their brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the same chemical responsible for feelings of love toward family. Crazy, right? Their brain literally convinces them that these wealthy athletes are members of their inner circle. But this is where things get interesting. People who aren't consumed by sports often possess what psychologists describe as weaker tribal instincts. Their sense of identity isn't deeply rooted in group affiliation. They lean more toward individualism. They're more inclined to think, I need to be part of something larger to feel whole. And there's real scientific evidence backing this up. A study conducted in 2018 discovered that individuals with little interest in sports exhibited far less us versus them thinking. In plain terms, they don't instinctively dislike the opposing team simply because it isn't theirs. But hold on, it gets stranger. Because what happens inside the brain of a hardcore sports fan during a game is genuinely alarming. You know that buzz you feel right before opening a gift? That sense of anticipation? That's dopamine activating in your brain. Sports fans experience that same surge throughout games. Every play, every possession, continuous tiny bursts of anticipation and reward. It's genuinely addictive. Brain imaging studies using fMRI scans reveal that watching your team engages the same reward centers as gambling and other highly stimulating behaviors. And here's the twist. The uncertainty is what makes it so potent. Not knowing whether your team will win keeps dopamine levels elevated. This is known as intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive reward pattern recognized in psychology. It's the exact principle that makes slot machines so hard to resist. The process closely mirrors other behavioral addictions. Your brain doesn't really differentiate between where dopamine comes from. It simply craves more. People who are indifferent to sports, their dopamine systems just don't respond to secondhand competition. And this could be genetic. Research from Binghamton University indicates that differences in dopamine receptor genes can predict how much someone enjoys competitive spectator events. Let that sink in. Your total lack of concern over whether the Yankees win or lose might literally be encoded in your DNA. But there's more to it. Sports fans experience a phenomenon known as basking in reflected glory. When their team wins, they say we won. When the team loses, they say they lost. Notice how the pronouns change. People who don't fixate on sports are less likely to use this kind of psychological separation. Their self-identity remains more consistent. They don't rely on external wins to feel accomplished. Their self-esteem is steadier and less dependent on outcomes they have no control over. Now, before the comments erupt, I'm not arguing that one mindset is superior to the other. What I am saying is that real psychological differences exist, and they're incredibly intriguing. Here's something that sounds paradoxical. Sports fans often score higher on certain measures of empathy. They regularly practice deeply caring about the struggles of others, even if those people are strangers wearing a specific jersey. So why don't non-sports fans feel that same empathy toward athletes? It comes down to how empathy is allocated. Everyone has a finite amount of emotional energy to invest deeply. People who aren't into sports often channel that empathy elsewhere toward social issues, close relationships, creative pursuits, or intellectual challenges. A study from 2020 showed that individuals with little interest in sports scored significantly higher in openness to experience and appreciation for art and beauty. They're getting their emotional peaks from art, music, nature, and ideas. Their brains are chasing the same things: reward, meaning, connection, transcendence. They're just discovering them through different avenues. And let's be honest about another factor. For some individuals, avoiding sports functions as a form of self-protection. Maybe they were picked on in gym class. Maybe they felt shut out by sports culture. Maybe they resist the aggression and hyper-competitiveness often associated with sports fandom. Or maybe they never understood why adults yell at televisions over a ball. Your lack of interest might have a personal history behind it. Or maybe you simply find it uninteresting. Both explanations are completely valid. But here's the part that explains why sports fans and non-fans often talk past each other. It all comes down to how meaning is experienced. Sports fans derive meaning from narrative, the underdog arc, the comeback, the dynasty, the rivalry. It's powerful because it's unpredictable, real-life drama with real emotional stakes. People who don't care about sports often see that randomness as pointless. They ask, why should I emotionally invest in an outcome I can't influence, carried out by people I don't know, in a game that has no real impact on my life? They're not wrong, but sports fans aren't either. It's simply two distinct ways of satisfying the human need for story and meaning. One group finds epic narrative in a championship run. The other discovers it in a book, a relationship, a creative endeavor, or a scientific breakthrough. This is what researchers describe as parasocial investment versus direct engagement. Sports fans form one-sided emotional bonds with teams and players. Non-sports individuals prefer putting their emotional energy into places where there's mutual exchange, where their involvement affects the outcome, where they're participants rather than observers. Neither approach is better. They're just different methods of navigating what it means to be human. Psychologist Abraham Maslow, who studied optimal experience, found that flow states, those moments of total immersion, can arise from countless activities. For some people, that's watching sports. For others, it's almost anything else. And here's what's especially intriguing. People who don't fixate on sports often report feeling more present in their own lives. They aren't spending 3 hours every Sunday immersed in someone else's struggle. They're focused on their own. There's something quietly radical about that. So what does all of this add up to? If you don't care about sports, you're not missing some essential human experience. You're simply wired differently. Your brain's reward system, your tribal tendencies, your distribution of empathy, they're all tuned in another way. And that's completely fine. The next time someone asks, "Did you watch the game?" and you genuinely couldn't care less, remember, you're not broken. You're not dull. I'll see you in the next one.